Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another live episode of The Breakdown. It is June 28th, 2026. Oh, we've got a bunch to talk about. We do. And we're going to, I apologize for the late start. Let's get that out of the way. I touched a thing. I'm not supposed to touch the things. And I touched one of the many things that makes the show go, and it caused some problems. So a slight delay. Everything is sorted now. We're very excited to present you tonight's program, and boy, it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride because it's been quite the week in Alberta politics. So, and Alberta politics adjacent type stuffs. So, with all of that said, consider yourselves warned, because we're going to start with some pretty heavy stuff right out of the gates. It is what it is. It's got to be dealt with. So we got to talk about the shooting that happened in Montreal, because it does have some very direct Alberta ties. And unfortunately, there is some overlap that exists, as well as some overlap that exists in the media sphere, let's say, because there has been, for anybody who's unfamiliar. And, I got to say, speaking personally for myself, it was... I mean, obviously, it's a tragedy that should go without saying. Unfortunately, in some cases, it has not. We're going to try to address that a bit. But it's obviously a tragedy on multiple levels, not only because there was a gunman who opened fire with very clearly ill intent. A police officer lost their life, but a civilian also lost their life in the course of that gun battle. So there's a lot of different tragedy, and my heart goes out personally to all of the other first responders, especially the first responders who were there on the scene, who treated those people, who did the best I have no doubts that they could, given the circumstances. But there's been some coverage, I guess one could say, around the left hand for the pointing, around the manifesto, because this shooter in particular did leave a manifesto behind. Copies of it were disseminated to multiple media outlets, and then some media outlets decided that it should be amplified. Now, here's the thing, and I want to preface this. Anybody who goes out and shoots people purely for ideological means is not okay. They're just not. So trying to look for any sort of sanity in a clearly profoundly dysregulated mind is best left to the forensic psychologists, the professionals. And to CBC's credit, they did that for the most part. In the article that we have here on the screen from that article, CBC described from that article, the manifesto described men as an oppressed class who are being exploited by both capitalism and women, said Catherine Keneally, Director of Threat Assessment and Prevention at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, an international think tank dedicated to studying authoritarianism, hate, and extremism. The manifesto is clearly linked to beliefs held by incels, or involuntary celibate, a misogynistic subculture for men who deem themselves involuntarily celibate, and encourages others to violently overthrow the existing system, Keneally said. So here's the thing. And again, I'm going to try to thread this needle as delicately as I possibly can, while still calling it out for what it is. The incel subculture that exists, I don't care how you choose to justify that. I don't care the political lengths that you go to try to justify your overarching thesis that women don't want to pay attention to you for reasons that are other than you. That's the bottom line. And I think that all members of the male species have had the experience where there has been somebody that they wanted the attention of and they were unable to get it. And that's okay. It's okay to be like, "Aw, shucks." Everybody has been rejected. The the difference though, and the leap that comes in is when it becomes, "I've been rejected, and that's wrong because I'm entitled to possess that person." That's where you are crossing a very big line because that person is still very much a person, and they get to make the decisions about who they want to spend their time with. They get to make the decisions about who they want to have relationships with. None of this should have to be explained, but unfortunately, because of the incel culture and the manosphere culture that exists largely online, um, eh, there are increasing numbers of young men who are getting sucked into this bullshit, and it's really, really, it's sad, but it's also unbelievably dangerous. And we saw how that unfolded uh, again. And I want to be clear: this is not the first time. It will not be the last time. Um, until we get these issues dealt with, and until we're able to have adult conversations about the underlying things driving these issues. This is not going to be the last time that somebody who thinks that they have been so wronged because women folk would not give them the attention that they believed that they were entitled to for whatever reason. Until we get that core thing dealt with, this is going to continue to happen. And unfortunately, there are individuals and folks who are more than happy to weaponize the justifications. And again, I want to be very, very clear here. If I don't care what justification, I'll be honest, I got a copy of the thing. I read the thing. It was clearly the product of a highly educated but also highly unwell mind that was way too entitled or believed that they had entitlement to people that they absolutely did not have entitlement to. So there was a lot of, I'm going to pull from over here and I'm going to pull from over here, and I'm going to find a million different ways to justify how the reason why I can't get a girlfriend is because of not me. It's anything but me. I have to blame everything but me. And it didn't take very long before there were groups, folks that were willing to try to weaponize this problem. Here we have a couple of tweets and posts from the likes of Rebel News and Juno News. Do with them what you will. But these posts very clearly try to draw conclusions that are taking away from the reality that this man was a misogynist. He was a misogynist who was willing to use whatever rationalizations he could put together to justify his belief that he should be entitled to whatever women he wanted to be entitled to. From Rebel News, he was an anti-Semitic communist. Read the Montreal Murderers' full 100-page manifesto, because of course Rebel News leaked out the whole manifesto. Juno News, legacy media ignores Montreal shooters' Marxist anti-Zionist manifesto. There's a lot of let's talk about everything but the core problem. There's a lot of how can we weaponize this and make this political. Conspiracy theorists, people who have this unchecked entitlement, will draw from anything in order to justify their beliefs. I don't care if he's a communist. I don't care if he's whatever. I don't care if he's a progressive. I don't care. If you're weaponizing a belief system in order to justify oppressing other people, that's it. That's the ball game. This is not in any way dissimilar to the notion that there are wonderful people out there who are Christians who make the world a better place. They do lovely things. They don't weaponize their faith. They take a very, hey, this is for me and you do you approach to thing. The same can be said about any major faith. Muslims, same thing. There's lots of Muslims out there who are wonderful, wonderful people. The overwhelming majority, to be clear. That's just the reality. Any faith, you will find people who are doing that faith because it gives them solace, because it gives them comfort, because it gives them a foundation of strength from which to draw from. Any belief system, you will find those things, but you will also find the evil ones who will weaponize those belief systems, whether it's a belief system that has nothing to do with religion or a belief system that has everything to do with religion. You will find people who are adherents to those belief systems who will absolutely weaponize those things in order to push other people down, to get what they want. And when that happens, that is not the to me at least, the right way to interpret those tragedies is to not go, see, he was a Christian. See, he was a Muslim. See, he was a communist. He was a progressive. He was a whatever he used to reinforce his bullshit position. Doesn't matter. Because you can do it with anything. You can take any political system, you can take any faith, and you can weaponize it to justify the things that you want to justify. That is not reflective of those political belief systems. It's not reflective of those faiths. It is reflective of how that person has chose to interpret those things to get what they want. And that's it. That's the ball game. And a reasonable person could make the argument that addressing the core problem is the thing that we should all be focused on. And in fact, there was a recent report that came down from the federal government where members of parliament urged action to undercut manosphere by tackling anti-women ideology. And let's be very, very clear. That's what we're talking about. It's not a communist thing, because there's lots of communists that are pro-women. There's lots of some communists, I don't know the numbers. Bear with me for the rhetoric here. There's some communists who are anti-women. There's some progressives who are pro-women. There's some progressives who are anti-women. There's some conservatives who are pro-women. There's some conservatives who are anti-women. At the end of the day, everybody should be able to get on the same page and go, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't be anti-women. Maybe that's what we need to be focusing on. Maybe that's the conversation that we need to have. Right? Bruce? I go back again, unfortunately, to the tweet from the Premier of Alberta's executive director, which is still up. And I think it's really important to not insufficiently underscore the fact that this tweet is this post from the executive director of the Premier's office calling out that article that I just put on the screen. I talked about this last week. I'm talking about it again because it's important. Bruce McAllister, this is truly disappointing from a major network or any network for that matter. There's so many issues the public would rather see reported. I remember when media used to present both sides and let the public decide. Too much of their focus these days is clearly supportive of woke, anti-conservative, activist issues pushing manosphere panic. Well, here's my question for you, Bruce. Is it woke? Is it anti-conservative? Is calling out the manosphere, the toxic masculinity, is that anti-conservative? Because if you're going to say that these things are anti-conservative, then the argument that you're making, whether you realize it or not, is that conservatism, or at least the conservatism that Bruce McAllister supports and advocates for, the argument that you're making, implied, is that Bruce McAllister supports the conservatism that is in line with the manosphere. Bruce McAllister supports the conservatism that is in line with the entitlement that comes with all of the toxic masculinity. That's, at the end of the day, if you're going to say that a report from the federal government saying that we as a society need to do better about calling out anti-women behavior, anti-women ideologies, because they predictably lead to the same outcomes. If your position is that, hey, it's anti-conservative to say that. I got to be honest. I have no idea what kind of conservatism you're practicing, but you should maybe check with your boss, Bruce. Moving on from there. What do we got next? Yeah, I started hot, and now I got nowhere to go because we're gonna go somewhere relatively benign. I tried to mix it in a little bit, but we got to talk about another one of the big issues on ambulances and EMS services in the province of Alberta. And this is, I probably have to do the boilerplate. Ready, everybody? You can say it with me if you want to. The views that I'm about to express in this segment of the program are reflective only of my personal views. I do not claim to be speaking for anyone other than myself or the breakdown. And any of the comments that I make should not be considered to be reflective of any organizations that I may or may not be affiliated with or employed by. There. With that out of the way, back in March, and this gets to be complicated. It gets to be a little tricky because ambulance services across the province of Alberta are not all the same. One of the things that happened when Alberta Health Services took over responsibility for all ground ambulance operation back in the day, and it was 2010. One of the things that happened with that, and one of the motives for that maneuver, for that decision, that policy change, was, boy, we got to standardize some of this stuff because the quality of ambulance service that someone's getting in Calgary is not the same as the quality of ambulance service that somebody's getting in rural Alberta, where it's staffed by 2 volunteer members of the community who are serving their community, but they do not have the training or the equipment that is equivalent to what Calgary has. We got to standardize this. Every Albertan deserves access to the same level of emergency medical services. That was the inspiration. There were some areas that, for a variety of different reasons, did not get folded into the AHS, now EHS, Emergency Health Services, folder. The way that was managed was EHS was still the body responsible, but they subcontracted out to a variety of different places. In some places, they contracted out to private services. In some places, they contracted out to First Nations who provided their own services under the subcontracting to AHS/EHS. And in some places, the municipalities made the decision that they were going to fight to hold on to their integrated services. Now, what an integrated service is it's a service that has firefighters that also are trained as paramedics. And so they spend some time on the fire trucks. I'm speaking broadly here. They spend some times on the fire trucks and they spend some times on the ambulances. Now, because you're dealing with a boatload of extra training and you're dealing with extra skill sets, and sometimes because it's different municipalities who are running the show and making their spending decisions, you're dealing with different toys, different pieces of equipment. The cost for a firefighter ambulance in, let's say, Lethbridge or Red Deer, the cost for that ambulance versus a cost for a standardized ambulance out of Calgary may be different. And it turns out in some places it was. So back in March, Hospital and Surgical Health Services Minister Matt Jones, because he was the minister at the time, said that the model where we have the firefighters who have all the firefighter training, but they also have the paramedic training and maintaining all those things, it's just too expensive. We got to find a way to cut that back. So there was a letter sent to all of the services saying, hey, and the municipalities that were responsible for them, hey, if you guys can't get your costs down, this is what we believe a ambulance should cost. If you can't get that down, then we're gonna have to work something out because we're not going to give you as much money as we have been. And what that meant was a funding cut. So if Lethbridge or Red Deer wanted to keep the same integrated firefighter, paramedic, ambulances on the street, those municipalities would have to spend money on their own, out of their own municipal tax base. It wasn't going to come from the province anymore. So there were roughly 23 other contractors that were providing the service for 40% less. 7 municipalities across the province operated their own integrated paramedic services or firefighter paramedic services. There were Red Deer, St. Albert, Strathcona County, Leduc, Spruce Grove, Lethbridge, and regional municipality of Wood Buffalo. Now, Wood Buffalo had a contract in place that would have carried them till 2028. So they had a little bit of time. But for all of the other services, the province basically said you either have to make the decision to ditch your services or you have to cough up the extra money. Red Deer, Strathcona County, and St. Albert decided to keep their model. Leduc, Spruce Grove, and Lethbridge decided that they did not have the extra funds to make up the difference in what the province was going to pay. So this was a big deal for a lot of people, especially a lot of folks, because like those are cities technically, but they're still very rural Alberta-esque in a lot of ways. And for a lot of these services, some of these services have been around for decades, if not almost centuries, or a century. And a lot of people were very, very upset about this, but this was the decision that the province had made, and this was the decision that the province was sticking with until they decided not to stick with it. Because Adriana LaGrange released another policy decree by tweet. This came out on June 22nd. Today, I directed EHS Alberta to halt its current procurement strategy for integrated fire EMS operators. We must deliver emergency health services in a consistent, fiscally responsible, patient-focused way, and we need to get this right. I've written the 7 community leaders so that we can found a typo again. So that we can purse a more deliberate and effective path forward. EHS Alberta will work with these communities and design a strategy that supports them and brings costs in line with provincially delivered EHS services by 2028-2029. This gives communities the time and support needed to plan, adapt, and build sustainable services while ensuring emergency health services are always there when Albertans need them the most. So basically, a lot of these places that already voted, they'd already gone through all of the assessments. They've already gone through the whole process. And while it's good, and I don't want to understate that, it is a good thing for these communities in many ways that they are going to be able to retain their fire ambulance services, at least till 2028, 2029. I hear there's an election coming in a year and a half, so maybe that'll be an issue. This is another example, unfortunately, of the UCP as a government plowing forward without having done any responsible due diligence to recognize the problems that they were creating and how they were pursuing to try to address issues that they believed were issues. And then having to, just kidding. We walking that one back. We are. So it's a bit of a theme, and it's a theme that we're going to be sticking with, unfortunately, for the rest of not for the rest of, but for a good portion of tonight's program. Moving on from there, some suboptimal news from this story here. Michelle Bellefontaine, that talks about the way that ADAP is going to be managed going forward. And this is where, again, we run into some very real problems. We run into some significant issues because, as we've highlighted on the show, as we've heard on our last 2 open mics from folks who are part of the disabled community, and as we've seen a lot of frustration. I mean, in the comments for some of the shows, we've had people talking about how they've been spending hours up at night talking to other members of the disabled community, being like, no, hold on, don't end your life. And we did see the tragic example of one person for whom these changes was the anvil on the camel's back, and they did end up dying from suicide. So this program has been very poorly managed, and it's been predicated on the assumption that, if we just get people to work more, then everything will be fine. But what's wild is the amount of money that's being spent on other things, because the administration of ADAP is not going to be done by government employees. It's not going to be done, by and large, by people from Alberta. from the article. AKG Canada, whose parent company is based in Australia, won a $47 million 5-year contract providing services in Edmonton and northern Alberta. Serco Canada, an affiliate of the UK-based contractor, so we have the UK and we have Australia, will oversee ADAP employment services for Canada and southern Alberta. The 5-year Serco Canada contract is worth $51 million. And this is where it gets kind of bonkers, because both AKG and Serco will refer ADAP clients to existing employment and service providers. In Edmonton and Calgary, the companies will offer a range of services to ADAP clients, including client assessment, production of an employment action plan, case management, and peer support. The prime contractors will then refer clients to existing employment service providers, not deliver the services themselves. So these two companies that have gotten tens of millions of dollars of contracts for 5 years each, it's $100 million basically that we're talking about. These two companies aren't employing people with that. Well, they're not employing ADAP recipients with that $100 million. They're employing people to do a little bit of training, do a little bit of referral, and then refer ADAP folks, people who have been kicked off of AISH, to their employment opportunities through other services. And this is one of the things, like we talked about this on our open mic last week. If you haven't gone back and listened to that, I strongly encourage that you listen to the things that Tammy had to say, because one of the things that was abundantly clear is the market capitalist reasons for hiring somebody with disabilities versus somebody without disabilities means they're going to hire the person without disabilities every single time, with the rare exception of the unicorns. But those are the exceptions, not the rule. And that's really, really important to highlight, because depending on a person's disability, especially when we're talking about the more invisible disabilities, but depending on a person's disability, the seriousness of that disability may well cause some unpredictability. There may be days where the chronic pain is worse. There may be days where the fatigue from the condition is worse, and that means that they can't go into work that day. What happens then? Is the employer just going to be like, yeah, it's cool, I didn't want to make money today using you or your labor or your skills, that's fine, I'll just sit here and figure out something else to do? That's not how corporations work. It's simply not. And this is where one of the core philosophical elements of this whole debate has been largely ignored. And I'm going to get to that in a sec. But before I do, for context, an analysis by Gillian Petit at the University of Calgary found that somebody on ADAP will have to work 39 hours per week at minimum wage to have benefits that are equal to those on AISH. Her calculations take into account taxes and other deductions that reduce take-home pay. So that's a lot. That is a full-time job. So what Danielle Smith is proposing with ADAP is not, hey, they can work a little bit, they can top things up, it's all good. It is, if they want to be able to get back where they were on AISH, according to this research by Gillian Petit, then they're going to have to work a full-time job. And this is where that philosophical debate comes into play. And I want to do this before I play the clip from yesterday's Your Province, Your Premier, because I think that it's an important thing to contextualize. I think it's something that we failed at contextualizing at, because the fundamental question, and I think for me, this goes to the core of what being Canadian actually is. There's a lot of people who like to talk about capitalism. There's a lot of people who like to talk about all of the benefits of pure capitalism. Just give me that pure hit of capitalism. But here's the problem with that. There is no room in capitalism for slowing down and making sure that nobody gets left behind. It is efficiencies. It is maximization. This is why we have seen so many of the jobs that have traditionally been associated with so many different things replaced by automation and AI. This is one of the biggest conversations that's happening in economics right now. What are we going to do when all of the jobs are replaced by AI? How are we going to handle that? It's going to be a seismic shift in our economy. Capitalism is survival of the fittest, period. End of sentence. And that is fundamentally not Canadian. Canada we do the socialism. And that's not a dirty word. All that socialism means at its core is you recognize the importance of society. You recognize that a purely capitalist system will leave people behind, and it will do so without a second thought. And if you want to have a society that is stable, you have to make sure that the people who have been dealt an unfair hand are still taken care of. Because otherwise, the system inevitably ends up eating itself. And we've seen this in history time after time after time. When you have groups that are purely concerned about what's maximally best for me, and there's no regard for all of the other people, those groups end up getting eaten. That's what happens. And for anybody who considers themselves to be a capitalist, my simple question would be this: are you okay with leaving people behind? Because programs like AISH, programs like ADAP, fundamentally at their core are not capitalist. They are moral, they are right, they are good, but they're not capitalist. And this is where the conversation about AISH and ADAP and how we treat and interact with the disabled community becomes such a reflection of who we are and what our priorities are. And it's fascinating that on programs like Your Province, Your Premier, where Danielle Smith ostensibly says, hey, I'm here to take your calls. You can have your one-on-one with the Premier of Alberta. And that's how the host plugs it week after week after week. As long as you're respectful, you can ask Danielle Smith anything you want. You can give her ideas. You can do all of these things. That is how that program is spun. But the veil dropped this weekend because, unsurprisingly, the disabled community, who have been totally aware that the boot has been on their neck for quite some time. Let's be clear about that. But the boot will now be pressing down considerably harder on their necks. And they wanted to have their moment. They wanted to try to get their phone calls. They wanted to get their arguments heard. They wanted to tell their stories so that perhaps the Premier of Alberta could hear them and consider course correcting. But the host of the show wouldn't have it. And instead, he gave Danielle Smith a completely unchallenged space where she got to just spew her thoughts without anybody having asked her a question, which is the premise of the show, and without anybody challenging her on anything. And this is what they had to say.
All right, lots of text messages, a couple phone calls coming in regarding AISH. We have talked about this almost ad nauseum over the last few shows. Premier Smith, for those who are listening who are concerned about AISH, what is the response right now? Because there has been this transition, and I think there's still a lot of uncertainty about how it's going to be impacting people.
Let me say one more time. The transition is going out to December of 2027. So we have over 18 months to make sure that those who are able to work are transitioned in a way that allows them to have the opportunity. We're spending $500 million with employers to give those first opportunities. And we have a long time horizon. And when I say that transition, it's because we want to preserve what people are making now. But those who can work, give them an opportunity to make even more money. And so this is the very unfortunate thing with the way the NDP is politicizing this. They're acting as if people are getting switched tomorrow. They're acting as if they're going to be short money tomorrow. They're terrifying the people who are on the plan, and they need to stop it because we have a vulnerable population that is getting very anxious about it. We are going to work with a caseworker, with every single individual, and if a person genuinely is unable to work, and I've talked to you about what that means. Like, we have autistic individuals who simply are unable to even have a conversation, let alone hold a job. We have people who have either severe physical, developmental, or other disability that are completely unable to make a living, and we want them to be supported with the highest premium. But we also have those who are temporarily facing disability, or they recover from it. Maybe they've had an injury, maybe they're on chemotherapy, maybe they've had a workplace injury, or maybe they're depressed. If we can get those folks recovered, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we want to create a pathway where they can then be self-supporting again? It's good for their own personal self-worth. It's good to be able to have a social network so that they have people around them who care about them. And then we also have those who on paper might look disabled, but they are actually able to support themselves and they just need pharmacare. We are creating 3 programs. The full transition will be January of 2028. We're going to make sure every current person on the program has an appropriate transition tailored for them. But anyone new coming into the program is going to go into one of those 3. Do you just need pharmacare? Do you go on the program that allows you to work up to $45,000 before being phased out? Or do you need 100% government support? You can't treat those three categories of disabilities the same. We have for a number of years. And I think it's got a lot of people who have the ability to do more stuck in a position where they reduce the amount that they work because they don't want to lose their benefits. So we're trying to correct all of these problems, but just know, I suppose we could take half the calls for the next 18 months on this issue, but we are not doing the full transition until December of 2027. There's lots of time for us to work out in a compassionate way so each person is not left feeling short.
Now, there's a lot of bullshit in there, and we're going to try to sort through some of it because Wayne Nelson just let her go ahead, and because he felt that the topic had been discussed to the point, had been discussed ad nauseum. Now, here's the thing. There's such a thing as colloquialisms. There's such a thing as little turns of phrases. But if you're going to use words, I don't know, professionally, then perhaps you should be a little bit more mindful about what those words mean. Because when you say we've discussed something ad nauseum, what you're saying ad nausea is you're saying that it has been discussed to the point of nausea. You are literally sick of having this conversation, and you can bear to have it no more, lest you spew. And it's wild that he would say that, and Daniel Smith would say, I guess we could keep taking calls. I guess we could do that. We could just keep taking calls for the next 18 months. But the transition is going to happen until December, so I don't know what the value is with that, because we want to make sure that people are heard. What? You want to make sure that people are heard. You want to make sure that nobody feels like they're being left behind. You just don't want to give them the microphone on your call-in radio show. Got it. It's almost as if the goal is to silence those voices so that people don't hear them and start to get alarmed by it. It seems like it might be a real problem here. But that's just the start of the bullshit. I take issue with the we have autistic people who can't even speak, and you know, how are they ever going to be able to function in the world? That is a profoundly flawed view of what can be accomplished when people who are nonverbal have the appropriate supports. One of the most impactful books that I've ever read in my life is a book called The Reason I Jump. It was written by a nonverbal autistic kid. And it, for anybody who wants to have a better understanding of what the general experience of autism can be like, or autism spectrum disorder can be like for folks, I'd highly, highly recommend it. But that's a nonverbal autistic person who wrote a book that changed many people's perception of autism spectrum disorder. So, maybe the generalities aren't so great. Maybe that's not so good. And maybe if we had, I don't know, a program that was designed in a way that looked at each individual as an individual, instead of labeling, well, if you can't move from the neck down, then you get AISH, or if you can't speak, then you get AISH, instead of creating a ticky box of bias and preconceived notions. If only there was a program that clearly articulated what the criteria were for accessing that program. Oh, wait, there was. It was called AISH. Because if we take a look at the medical adjudications manual from AISH, for medical adjudications, AISH decides if an applicant has a severe, quote, severe handicap based on the definition in the AISH regulation, section 11D. 3 components must be satisfied to confirm the applicant meets the severe handicap definition. These are those 3 components. Number 1, does the applicant have an impairment of mental and or physical functioning? Number 2, does the impairment cause a substantial limitation in the applicant's ability to earn a living? Number 3, is the impairment likely to continue to affect the applicant permanently because no remedial therapy is available that would materially improve the applicant's ability to earn a living? Those are the criteria for getting on the program that, as up until July 1st, was AISH. So you have to wonder, when Danielle Smith says, oh, there's people who are on AISH who are trapped, they had an injury. A permanent injury, but you said they could recover. If they could recover, then they would not meet the number 3 of the criteria. That's seems like maybe Danny's being a little disingenuous, maybe a little misrepresented. Well, chemo. Okay, sounds like. And to be clear, there are times where chemo is life prolonging, where those sorts of interventions are life prolonging. There's not really a huge hope of recovery, but there's lots of folks who are on chemo who absolutely are able to recover and their cancer goes into full remission. So I guess that can't be it, because that again would meet if they're injured in the workplace. Really, we're not going to talk. We're just going to pretend we don't have programs like WCB. That's what we're going to do when we're talking about this program. Okay, cool. It's bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. And for her to throw out depression as an example, the amount of treatment that would have to be pursued before a doctor was willing to say that there was no remedial therapy available that could materially improve that applicant's ability to earn a living, you're talking about a pretty major pursuit of all of the things, all of the different treatments that had been tried and applied with no success before you can get to the point where you would have satisfied number 3. Which brings me to my final point. When it comes to what disabilities are or how people were qualified for the AISH program, it seems, by Danielle Smith's own words, that she doesn't have a clue what she's talking about. And she's demonstrated this time and time again when she's talked about this file. She just doesn't seem to have any sort of a grasp of the subject matter whatsoever. But she's still willing to talk about it with her full chest, like she knows exactly what's going on and she's got a mastery of the subject. And that is one of and I've said it before on the show, that is one of Danielle Smith's great skills, but it's also one of the reasons why people would do very well to, when she speaks, approach every single word with skepticism. It is unfortunate that we are now at a place where when the Premier of Alberta uses words, the only appropriate default place to start is, I think that's false. Let's find out if I'm wrong. When she says words, you have to assume she's wrong. She's lying. She's being deceptive. She's being disingenuous. And a combination of those things. You have to assume that. Which is not to say that she doesn't occasionally let a little one out that is factually correct. Stop clock theory. It is what it is. But if you want to be able to approach anything she says, you have to start with the assumption that it is false before you go any further. And this is not something that is limited to just Danielle Smith. It extends to her wider tribe. As we heard, some of the folks, what helped her get to leadership share some of their thoughts on how Alberta could be successful as a separate country.
Is annexation of Northwest Territory. If Northwest Territory become Alberta, which we can do under our constitution, then we can bring our pipelines, and as many pipelines as we want, because now it's all provincial land, up to Tuktoyaktuk. And if we do that at the same time as buying a fleet of icebreaker, we can take control of Northwest Passage. So I've done in my book a bit of study how much it would cost to do all these infrastructure. You're looking at roughly 210 billion all together. That will then bring in 70 billion a year. So it's a good investment.
I mean, to say that we could just take over the Northwest Territories because it's our constitution is a bold claim. I'm not sure what is more bold, though. I don't know if saying we could just take over the Northwest Territories and everything would be fine is more bold than holding up an assortment of loose, unpacked pieces of paper and saying, in my book, I folded it in half. Now I have double. It's a very big book. That is not a book. That is $1.99 or $11.99 at Staples. That's all that is. It's not a book. It's not. It doesn't even have a spine. Kind of like the Premier some days. Oh, a dad joke. But while the rhetoric from the separatists, and I could play clip after clip after clip, I could make this whole show a clip show of separatists saying outlandishly dumb things, like that their merch is overpriced, but you should buy it anyways because you're suckers. Maybe they didn't say the last part quite out loud, but literally, these are the things that separatists say could be its own show. Let's instead focus on things that smart people say, because the Calgary Chamber of Commerce released a report where they talked about the impacts of separatism, and it's not good. It's very bad, and in fact, even the conversation is very, very bad. They released an infographic with the report to sort of underscore the greatest salient details. But according to a poll of their members, so these are some of the biggest businesses in Calgary, 8 in 10, 80% of members of the Alberta Chamber of Commerce think the separatism discussion is negatively affecting Alberta's economy. So the people who are actually in the economy are saying, oh, this is having an impact and it's not good. 48% of members are likely to leave Alberta if it votes to start the separation process. 48% of businesses in Calgary who are members of the Chamber of Commerce saying, we're out. 1 in 5 members are slowing expansion plans, with 15% considering relocation contingent on the referendum outcome. And let's just be clear about that for a second. Even if the referendum gets slapped down as in the ways that it should be, even if that's the case, the harm is real. The fact that 80% of their members are saying, no, it's negatively affecting Alberta's economy is bad. But the fact that 20% are saying that they are slowing their expansion plans, this is not, what do you think? What do you feel? This is 20% of the members of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce saying, yeah, I'm not building out as aggressively as I would be if this wasn't a conversation. That is a clear and definable negative impact of entertaining this bullshit conversation. But that's just still, that we're not even past the first row. 74% of members see no tangible benefits to separating from Canada. When it comes to the economic impact assessment, 1 in 3 jobs in Alberta are tied with trade to other provinces, the rest of the world. 16 cents of every dollar earned in the province is generated through interprovincial exports. A total of $78 billion in income for all Albertans. If there was to be separation, 6% reduction in Alberta's per capita GDP if separation occurred, shrinking the workforce by 175,000 people and the economy by $62 billion per year. Let's just say that again. If separation occurred, 175,000 Albertans would lose their jobs It would cost the economy $62 billion per year. That's not one-time cost. That's $62 billion per year. This is not coming out of rando Facebook. I wrote a book. This is not coming from that. This is coming from the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. They also say that there is $10 to $15 billion in foregone investment in 2026 due to the uncertainty, up to $3,000 per Albertan. That's $10 to $15 billion. People talk about the cost of the referendum, and we see this $130 million number bandied about because that's the actual cost of implementing the referendum. But when we're talking about what the cost of the referendum is to the province of Alberta, we have an infographic from the Calgary Chamber of Commerce where they did their homework and they've determined $10 to $15 billion in foregone investment in 2026 due to the uncertainty, up to $3,000 per Albertan. This referendum on a referendum in defiance of reason, logic, in open contempt for First Nations folks, in open contempt for every single Albertan who doesn't want to see this referendum brought forward, in open contempt for the Forever Canadian folks, in open contempt for the principles of democracy. Again, I remind you of the shit show that was the committee meeting where they released the results before the vote was done. This contemptuous process is costing Albertans between $10 to $15 billion in investment. That should be the biggest stick that Danielle Smith is hit with by the NDP or the Tory party or the Greens or whoever else is out on the landscape. That should be the biggest talking point of all of the third-party advertisers. This referendum isn't just dumb, and it is dumb. This referendum is costing Albertans $130 million in taxpayer money that taxes have already been paid for, but it's also costing the province $10 to $15 billion in investment. Moving on from there. Let's talk about drugs. Oh, it's going to be one of those dirt shows. It is. Don't worry. We're going to have some fun at the end. I promise. Because I'm going to get myself into trouble. Let's talk about drug deaths. There's too many. Any is too many, to be clear. But there's some good-ish news as long as you don't live in Alberta. Because opioid deaths dropped across Canada last year. Comparatively, though, Alberta's decline was relatively small. This is new information that came from Stats Canada, so from the federal government that takes a look at the entire country for who's reporting data. And if you take a look at the per capita, so the number and crude rate per 100,000 population of apparent opioid toxicity deaths, Alberta is second, kind of. The second, maybe third. BC is complicated because BC's numbers include deaths related to all unregulated drugs, so not just opioids, but benzodiazepines, stimulants, all of that kind of stuff. That's all mixed into BC's numbers. So their numbers might be a little bit but Alberta's are not good. They dropped a little bit coming out of 2023, but they have remained relatively static in that point in time. And when we take a look at the opioid deaths per 1,000 or per 100,000 by province or territory, BC is at the top because they include all of the deaths of all of the drugs, and Alberta is third. in the entire country. Now, all of this is happening as Danielle Smith and the UCP are singing the praises of Marshall Smith's recovery model that he was the architect of, and how Alberta is leading the nation and the world, except we're not. And one of the things that makes that particularly clear is the number of EMS responses to suspected opioid-related overdoses in Alberta 2017 to 2025. Depending on which way you choose to look at it, there were drops in 2022 and 2024, so that's good. But the overall trajectory has been going up and continues to go up. 2025 saw the highest number of EMS responses in Alberta's history to suspected opioid-related overdoses. So Alberta is leading the country, perhaps, in sending ambulances to opioid issues, but certainly not leading the country in preventing them. And when we take a look at the rates of hospitalizations, Alberta per capita is second in the country. BC still manages to get ahead of us, but we beat out everybody else in regards to how many people per 100,000 end up in hospitals in 2025. Now, a lot of people are asking the question, well, how is it that our numbers are going up so much, but people are dying less? And it's good that people are dying less, but fundamentally, one of the biggest reasons has to be, and is demonstrated to be, because of a study out of BC, I'm going to say the two big scary words here, harm reduction. Narcan kits in the public are absolutely harm reduction. And in BC, what they found was that access to free Narcan kits prevents 4 out of 5 potentially fatal overdoses. So people are using, yes, and in certain areas of the country, they're using less, they're using more, but they're dying far less frequently because of the availability of Narcan kits. And I want to be clear. The beef that I have here is the continued rhetoric that we see from the UCP. I mean, Mike Ellis with his, they want the good stuff. Doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. The repeated rhetoric that we see from the people who are calling themselves conservatives these days in regards to how to address the opioid crisis. It's bullshit. It's wrong. There's very little, if any, data to support some of the things, and there's a lot of data to support things like harm reduction principles. Now, some people will immediately go, but Nate, you just finished saying that BC is doing so badly. Okay, yeah, their numbers are higher. They kind of had a head start on everybody. But what's the trend? And when we take a look at the trends in EMS responses, we can see very clearly EMS responses are definitely trending up in Alberta. And in BC, they're leveling on, dropping off. When we take a look at the trend for opioid hospitalizations, Alberta's is wildly unpredictable, but as of 2025, trending up, where BC's has been trending down since 2023. Now, that is not to say that BC has a perfect system. They don't. Nobody does. But one of the things that's critically important is, and this is something that you've heard from many experts on this show before, it needs to be an all-hands-on-deck approach. It needs to be whatever is going to work for this person to get them out of the situation that they are in, to get them the supports that they need, to build those relationships. Whatever that is, let's do that. For some people, that will be Narcan kits. For some people, that will be supervised consumption sites. For some people, that will be handing out bubbles, the things that you smoke the drugs in, the little glass tubes. For some people, it will be handing out those so they can use safely and not die from diseases. For some people, for the same reasons, it's handing out needles. If you put all options on the table, then you have all options. As soon as you start restricting options, you are taking away opportunities to reach people who are, by and large, entirely reachable if it's done in the right way, in the right timeline, and on their terms. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, until somebody is willing to and able to accept help, there's nothing that you can do. But the UCP think they have that beat. And this is where a stunning story by Brent McKay, who is one of my favorite journalists. On the open mic, some people were asking, "Hey, who are journalists that you like?" Brent McKay. This dude, he's doing a lot of work with the Independent Journalism Foundation, but if he's one of the best investigative journalists in Alberta right now. I'll just say it, and I'll probably piss off a bunch of journalists, but whatever. He came out with this banger of a story that really highlights just what we're after. And it's not about treatment, it's about control. Because according to this story, the province plans to build 250-bed compassionate intervention centers, one each in Calgary and Edmonton, but they won't be ready until 2030. The latest provincial budget included funds to create secure beds for involuntary treatment in existing facilities to come online in 2027, including hospitals in Grand Prairie, Edmonton, Ponoka, and Calgary. So they're going to be doing forced treatment, holding people against their will in hospitals in Grand Prairie, Edmonton, Ponoka, and Calgary. A confidential Recovery Alberta document obtained by the IGF, Investigative Journal Foundation, also identifies Edmonton's Henwood Treatment Centre and the Addiction Recovery Centre, ARC, at Alberta Hospital Edmonton as interim treatment locations. To get Henwood ready for involuntary treatment, the current voluntary addiction treatment program would need to be closed, and renovation and staff recruitment would be needed for a fall 2026 opening, Recovery Alberta staff reported. So let's just dwell on that paragraph for a moment, shall we? What that paragraph says is that in order to incarcerate people and hold people against their will to force treatment on them, they're going to be taking away beds for people who want it, people who want treatment. Those people who, by every definition, are more likely to have success in recovery because, again, they want it. Those people, they're losing access to some beds. ARC has 50 beds available for patients requiring medical support during detoxification and is one of the 2 publicly funded adult detox facilities in Edmonton. Opening ARC for compassionate intervention, secure withdrawal management would require renovating half the site. Alberta's Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction confirmed in March that between 20 and 35 beds at Alberta Hospital Edmonton, where ARC is located, would be renovated to support the implementation of compassionate intervention programming. So they're getting rid of beds for people that want them so they can force people who don't want them into them. That's what the story says. And this is where it gets really bonkers, because as much as the UCP likes to talk about all the positive changes, and you've heard Danielle Smith say on multiple occasions, oh, there's so many treatment spaces available. Anybody can just walk into treatment. Now, anecdotally, there's lots of people who will say, well, that's absolutely not the case. But the story includes some data that's pretty damning. The average wait time to get into an addiction outpatient clinic in Alberta was 14 days and 0 days in the Edmonton zone at the end of 2019. So, right before the UCP took over, and the opioid crisis was absolutely, it was ticking along there pretty darn good. Right before that happened, 14 days and 0 days in the Edmonton zone. This data was previously reported in Alberta Health Services annual reports, but public reporting stopped in 2020. By 2024, the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction estimated that the average provincial wait time was between 20 and 37 days. So they made it worse in every way, and now they're going to take away beds for people who want them to put people who don't want them into them. Which brings us to the question of the does forced treatment work? Now, we've covered this on the show before, but we're going to go over it really quickly right now because there are some things that are critically important to highlight. The Canadian Public Health Association, in February 27th of 2025, released this statement calling for the provincial government to scrap the forced treatment bill. In that release, what they said was, since evidence from jurisdictions with involuntary treatment policies show that a compulsory treatment does not reduce drug-related harms, improve long-term health outcomes, or prevent overdose deaths. CPHA's 2025 position statement on the drug crisis underscores that involuntary treatment can increase the risk of fatal overdose upon release, violate human rights, and deter people from seeking voluntary health care. Further, forced treatment disproportionately affects structurally disadvantaged populations and reinforces stigma and discrimination against people who use substances. Alberta's current emphasis on involuntary treatment makes no sense given the difficulties and long wait lists faced by individuals seeking voluntary treatment for substance use disorders. But that's not all. The AMA also released a position statement where they referred to the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction document. And this is from also February of 2025. What were the conclusions of that document? The debate surrounding involuntary treatment for severe substance use disorders in Canada involves a complex effort of considering issues of evidence-based care, public safety concerns, and individual and patient rights. I'll leave the thing up. You can read the whole thing if you want to, but there's one paragraph that I want to highlight. International experiences with involuntary treatment have suggested ethical concerns, mixed evidence for benefits, and findings of increased risk for health harms among individuals who are involuntarily treated, including the possibility of increased mortality risk following discharge from involuntary treatments. Even one of the papers that the UCP uses to try to justify involuntary treatment, with one of the authors who is one of the big proponents of the forced treatment, they released a paper, and the conclusions of that paper from 2023 are very, very clear. There's a lack of high-quality evidence to support or refute involuntary treatment for persons with SUD. Substance use disorder. More research must be done in this controversial evidence to inform health policy. There is a need for future studies to distinguish between the effects of involuntary treatment and the lack of access to evidence-based addiction and mental health care among people who are involuntarily detained or institutionalized. So even the paper written by the guy who's the architect, one of the architects of this whole shit show, says, well, there's no evidence. It's kind of like saying there's no evidence that banging my head repeatedly into a wall decreases the risk of finger cancer. You know what we should give a try? We should have everybody bang their heads into the walls to see if it decreases the risk of finger cancer. We don't have any evidence to support this experiment, but it's only lives and heads. What are you going to do? And that's from the author. And that is an author, the Dr. Rob Tanguay, who has something of a controversial history for misrepresenting things. He had to apologize for a paper a few years back that used Avenue magazine as a source and stigmatized supervised consumption sites quite grossly. But he's also written some opinion stuffs. And when we take a look at what those opinion stuffs have to say, they're also pretty revealing of bad faith arguments, because this is an opinion piece that he wrote to the Globe and Mail back in November 4th of 2024, where he said the headline is "Involuntary treatment for severe addiction is better than doing nothing." I don't know who's advocating for doing nothing. I don't know who that is. I have never, not once, come across a person who has said, hey, when it comes to people with substance use disorder, you know what we should do? Nothing. We should do nothing. We should just, hey man, hands off. entirely. Let's not offer any supports. Let's not offer any treatment. Let's not offer any counseling. Let's not offer any medications. Let's not address any underlying trauma. Let's not diagnose the underlying mental health issues that are partially responsible for driving some of this. Let's just do nothing. The only people who say that are the people who are cynically making the argument that if we leave them alone, they'll die and the problem will go away. Nobody serious is making the argument that we should do nothing. And framing the argument that way in an op-ed that is published to a major national newspaper is just irresponsible. There is a whole lot of things that we can be doing before we start violating people's charter rights, taking them against their will, and forcing them into treatment that is ultimately not evidence-based, not evidence-supported, and a lot of evidence suggests will only put them at further risk. Moving on from there, let's talk by-elections. We're getting to the fun stuff now. Calgary Shaw. Oh, look at you. Look at you, Calgary Shaw. Just up there as a map, because that was the best that we could do for graphics for Calgary Shaw. Calgary Shaw. The big parties have been nominating themselves some candidates. We got two so far. The NDP have officially nominated Kyle Campbell for Calgary Shaw. The UCP have also nominated their candidate Mike Derry for Calgary Shaw. And this gets to be a lot pretty quick for at least one of these gentlemen. Let's take a look at Kyle Campbell first. And I want to be very clear. To be clear, what we're about to do is an exercise in reading bios that were provided by these parties, and then also taking a look, has the breakdown been able to identify any red flags for either of these gentlemen yet? Spoiler alert, the answer is yes, but only for one of them. So let's talk about Kyle first. Kyle Campbell is a fourth-generation Albertan with family roots in this province that go back further than Alberta itself. He has spent years giving back to his community, coaching his son's baseball and basketball teams, and serving as president of the Somerset Residents Association. In 2023, Kyle's life changed when he was diagnosed with cancer. Navigating the healthcare system as a patient gave him a clear-eyed view of what's at stake when that system falls short, and a deep commitment to making sure every Albertan can count on world-class care when the unexpected happens. So that's Kyle's bio. That's a pretty good bio. We have spent some time doing the Googling and the Facebook searching and all of that kind of stuff, and have not yet identified any significant or notable red flags for Kyle. If anybody has them, that's what we do here. Send us a DM. We'll check them out and see what we see. The UCP candidate, Mike Derry. And this is... There are some good pictures of Mike Derry on social media, on some of his promotional materials. Why they would go with this one, I am unsure. It's just a little bit, if Jack Nicholson played Pennywise, I think this is what we might end up with. And that's it's not a criticism of the Mike himself. This is a fascinating choice. We've got Mike looking down, serious, furrowed eyebrows. It's a fascinating choice. The tone is fascinating to me. What is Mike's bio from his official website? Now, he doesn't have a UCP page yet. The bio that we got for Kyle was from the NDP page. Mike doesn't have a UCP page yet. This is from his nomination website. Mike was born and raised in Calgary. He and his wife of 18 years are proud parents of two boys who attend local public schools. The Derry family is actively involved in the community, particularly through youth sports and local initiatives. After many years in corporate leadership within the oil and gas sector, Mike founded and continues to lead Legendary. It's the dairy part of Legendary is spelled DERRY. Talent, a successful human resources and business consulting firm. His experience gives him a strong understanding of both large corporate environments and the realities facing small business owners. He's known for bringing people together to find practical, balanced solutions. So both of these bios are, to be expected. Hey, this person's great. But, and I think, is red flags soccer? Is it a soccer? I don't know. I'm going to say it's soccer. We're going to do our little FIFA segment here because there are some red flags that immediately popped out on Mike's nomination website that definitely need to be addressed. Let's start with the endorsements. He's got a few endorsements on his page, but there's two in particular that jump out and bid us over here at the breakdown. The first one reads, as a member of the Muslim community, I feel that Mike is the only candidate that supports freedom of religion. While we do not share the same faith, he demonstrates genuine respect for people of all backgrounds. Mike Derry has my full support. That comes from a Mahmoud Moura, president of an association. And it's a dubious question whether or not that association is still registered. We haven't been able to confirm that, but he says he's the president of the Calgary Lebanese Association. I just want to hang out for a second on that because Mike's big competitor was current Calgary City Councillor Dan McLean. And so for Mr. Moura to say Mike is the only candidate that supports freedom of religion, and he demonstrates genuine respect for people of all backgrounds, that's not very nice. I wonder how Dan McLean felt reading that. So let's talk about Mr. Moura first, because we have to talk about the other one in a sec. But let's talk about Mr. Moura first, because when you Google Mahmoud Moura, one of the things that happens is you come across this fascinating little court decision where two members of the Muslim community, one of them being a Mahmoud Moura, were granted, had permanent restraining orders put against them by the Muslim Council of Calgary, the Muslim Community Foundation of Calgary, and the Muslim Association of Calgary for behaving badly in mosques. So that's a fascinating choice. If that's the same, I'm not saying it definitely is. If that's the same Mahmoud Moura, that's a fascinating choice of your the person who's going to speak as a member of the Muslim community. Maybe that's a one-off. Maybe that's just a one-off thing. There's no reason to believe that this Mahmoud Moura is somebody who would have issues with that sort of. Oh, wait, yes, in fact, Mahmoud Moura was charged with criminal harassment with hate crimes elements. So that's not nothing. What else do we know about Mr. Moura? Well, from his own social media, Mr. Moura is an avowed separatist. Here he is with Mitch Sylvester at the drop-off of the separatist petition, wearing a Republic of Alberta T-shirt and Alberta Republic hat. So there's that. That's that's all I have on. Well, there's a lot more. We've talked about Mr. Moura many times on the show because he's also been an active member of Take Back Alberta. He's also was one of the people who was screaming on city corners about the trans threat to children. He's got quite the little footprint in Alberta politics. But let's talk. I don't want to do a whole Mahmoud Moura show. Let's talk about the other endorsement, because the other endorsement read, Mike Derry is the best choice for Calgary Shy. He's the only candidate that lives in our area, and I think voting local and supporting local matters. Says Daryl Comic, president of the United Conservative Party of Calgary Lougheed. So it's important that people live in the areas that they represent, because voting and living locally matters. I wonder, I find myself curious at the very least, if that perhaps was vetted with the greater party, because as we all know, Danielle Smith's constituency is not the one that she lives in. It's very, very far away. It just happened to be the most easily secure and available. So there's that. Daryl Comic is a fascinating character. He is the UCP president for Lougheed Constituency Association. He tried to become the party president, did not win. Anybody who's familiar with Calgary Lougheed in the UCP constituency there knows that they've had a bit of a bumpy ride. He has regularly hosted the Injection of Truth and that Injection of Truth brand event in Calgary Lougheed, sharing misinformation sessions. In June of going back to June of 2024, there's been many since then on a variety of issues where they platform people who or don't know what they're talking about. For the most part, some of them have had to leave the country. Some of them have been found to be practicing medicine illegally. So that's Daryl. Daryl also got in trouble because on July 30th of 2024, he claimed that Ukrainian refugees were walking around with swastikas. He's also been pivotal in Calgary Lougheed's ongoing misinformation events targeting trans youth and advocating for, wait for it, separatism. So we've got these two guys. We've got Daryl and Mahmoud, who are very, very proud separatists. And that's two of the endorsements on Mike Derry's website. Now, to be clear, that does not mean definitively that Mike Derry is a separatist. And I'm not saying that Mike Derry should be held responsible for the actions of Mr. Mora or Mr. Comic. I do, however, find myself asking the question, why would you put those endorsements up, sir? If these two people have views that are publicly available and your due diligence extends to, I will put up anything nice anyone says to me on my website, that is I have some questions about that. I do. Because if those are the, you're known by the company you keep. And if those are the friends that you're choosing to hang out with and the endorsements that matter to you, that you've put on your website that you want people to know about, I do have some questions. But the red flags don't stop there, because we also have this social media post from Mike Derry's Facebook group where he says he's posing with Danielle Smith and I believe his wife. Wow. This is when he found out he won. Thank you to my family, to my campaign manager at Craig B. Chandler, and the whole team. Thank you to the folks of Calgary Shaw for allowing me the opportunity to represent the UCP on the next ballot. And a special thank you to the Premier. And I love that he small caps Premier. I mean, we do that here. It's a passive aggressive little thing, but I love that he did it on his I won post. For making a small detail of him over the moon. Thank you, Mike. And that's not the only photo that came out of the event. There was also this photo with Danielle Smith holding a Mike Derry sign, standing beside Mike Derry, and then the big guy right there. That's Craig Chandler wearing another federal candidate's. A federal candidate's campaign shirt. Which is a choice, I guess. And here's the thing. The Breakdown has a little bit of a history with Mr. Chandler. Sure do. Mr. Chandler briefly had a lawsuit against the Breakdown. So what I will say about Craig Chandler is limited to feel free to Google. And now I will read from a Wikipedia entry. And to be clear, I am reading only from a Wikipedia entry that highlights some of the recent controversial events in Mr. Chandler's history, allegedly, according to Wikipedia. In 2016, Chandler claimed that the restaurant chain Earl's supports terrorists by purchasing meat from a U.S. supporter that offer halal products. Following the backlash to this, Chandler resigned from the PC Party of Alberta Board of Directors. Chandler apologized for his comments in 2016, but in 2018 said that he never apologized and he never will. In disputed videos. In 2022, If you know, you know. Chandler was featured in an online video deemed racist along with former Alberta Cabinet Minister Jonathan Dennis. The video clip showed him using offensive stereotypes of First Nations. In an interview, Chandler stated that he was pictured in one of the videos and that, quote, some comedy is not politically correct, but this is a private function of my close friends. The video was taken by a close friend, I thought, end quote, he said. Chandler was working on Danielle Smith's leadership campaign when the videos came out, and she fired Chandler over it. Later, Chandler changed his story, claiming the videos were fake. However, Hani Farid, an expert in the area of deepfakes, states, I think it's extremely unlikely that these are deepfakes. You know, I'm just going to throw it in here. I would imagine that if somebody had been the subject of litigation, that they maybe had one of those videos forensically analyzed at the highest level available, and that forensic analysis determined the video to not be fake. I can imagine something like that happened. I'm not saying that it did. I'm just saying that I can imagine it. Finishing our little story time. Threatening to sue Steve Outhouse. On March 22nd, Chandler posted to his two Facebook pages, LinkedIn and Twitter account, his dissatisfaction with UCP campaign chair Steve Outhouse. He later took down 3 of the posts, but left his Twitter post in place. Chandler professed dissatisfaction with Outhouse being named campaign chair while being from for being Ontario, among other complaints. There's a citation needed for that one. So that was Nate reading the Wikipedia entries that we retrieved today. This is what Wikipedia says today. I'm not suggesting that anybody should take it as anything more than what's on Wikipedia today. I'm not suggesting that anybody could click on any of those citations and either find the supporting information and determine it on their own to be accurate or not. I am simply reading the Wikipedia entry that we retrieved today. I have no reason to believe that this information is false in any way. Having maybe a little bit of firsthand knowledge of some of these things. Moving on from there. The reason why all of this has come up is, of course, because Rebecca Schultz resigned. But this is where things get a little weird, because there's some potential devil in the details with that resignation. Schultz resigned at the beginning of the year as minister. In fact, it was, I'll read the paragraph. I've offered the Premier my resignation as Minister of Environment and Protected Areas as of January 2nd, 2026. I will continue to serve the people of Calgary Shaw and support our incredible United Conservative team in the legislature until May 2026. And there were some people who were like, well, she had to stay because of the legislative session. They needed that vote. They did not. She was a backbencher MLA. I honestly don't have any recollection. I'd have to check Answered, but I don't have any recollection of her speaking during any of the legislative sessions, certainly not playing any sort of substantial role in any of the policies or legislation that was introduced. So a lot of people have asked the question, why May of 2026? And this is where fun with math happens. Because if we count from May, let's just go 6 months as an arbitrary number. End of May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Oh, doesn't it feel like we might be playing some water, not coal games where timelines kind of start to matter? And when you take a look at the actual rules for calling a by-election, when a vacancy occurs in the membership of the Assembly, the clerk shall issue and deliver the clerk's warrant to the Chief Electoral Officer for the issuance of a writ for the election of a member to fill a vacancy. Deliver a copy of the warrant to the clerk for the Executive Council. Within 6 months after the delivery of the warrant to the Chief Electoral Officer, an order shall be made under Section 39 of the Election Act authorizing the issue of a writ for an election to fill the vacancy. Notwithstanding subsection 2, an order need not be made under Section 39 of the Election Act if the vacancy occurs during the last year of the legal life of the Assembly. And this is where we get into fun with words, and Nate's a cynic when it comes to this government. Because if you do the math, November, 6 months from the date that Schultz resigned there, that would put it within a year of the next provincial election. Huh. So by one interpretation, which I'm sure could be legally challenged, because the vacancy is occurring into that year of the next election, Danielle Smith could very easily stand up the end of November, go, hey guys, I know everybody's expecting a by-election, but here's the thing. It's less than a year to the next election. Do we really want to spend all that time and money and effort and energy in running a by-election when we don't really need it? We don't really need it. We got these other two MLAs down south. They're going to do such a good job of listening and taking care of the concerns of South Calgary. That's what we're going to do, because we don't. The rules say if it's the vacancy is within a year. It doesn't say the start of the vacancy. It just says the vacancy occurs. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to save. We're going to be responsible with our money, because we just had this really expensive referendum. We're going to be responsible, and we're not going to hold this by-election. We'll just do it as part of the general election. It's not a reach. It's really not. And this has been a theory that I've been kicking around for a while, and I've run it by some people who are much smarter than me, and they've said, well, that's not how it's supposed to work. But yes, that's entirely within the realm of possibility. I am 50-50 on this, folks. I got to be honest. I'm 50-50. I can absolutely see the last thing that Danielle Smith is going to want to do is throw up a by-election that could potentially involve a separatist candidate coming out of a referendum, because I have not seen any public statements from Mr. Derry saying I'm absolutely not a separatist, despite calls from the NDP to do that. It's going to be fascinating. I strongly suspect that if Dan McLean had won, they would have gone ahead with the by-election right away, because what a way to spend the summer, kids. But with this, I would not be surprised if Danny punts it and waits, because look what she did in Calgary Elbow. That's just neat. Editorializing and pontificating to some degree. Moving on from there. We got to do a couple of your province, your premier segments before we get to the really fun stuff. Because there's some instructive pieces. When we think about the fact that the host of your province, your premier, Wayne Nelson, decided to gatekeep who was going to be talking about, not even who was going to be talking, but what topics were going to be talked about on the show. The influence that this show can have over Danielle Smith, the Your Province, Your Premier show, it was brought into very sharp focus yesterday.
Hi, Premier Smith. On June 13th, you said public health inspectors don't belong in acute care because we don't work in hospitals or perform surgeries, and I agree. We work in community health centers, and our work is prevention alongside public health nurses and other public health professionals who have already transitioned under the Ministry of Primary and Preventative Health Services. Since your government has created new public health enforcement officers, wouldn't it make more sense for those enforcement roles to be with Alberta Health, while public health inspectors move under the Ministry of Primary and Preventative Health Services? Would you commit today to reconsidering moving public health inspectors under that ministry?
Well, Lori, thanks. I think you called last week. Thank you, because I took it, or last time. Thank you, because I took it away. And what we discovered is that what you're proposing is exactly the right solution, is that we would have the public health inspectors move under the agency of primary care, and that then maintains all of the seniority and the various benefits and the various pay levels. That was the real issue that we discovered, is that by coming into government, it would have meant that those 300 or so workers would have had to switch unions. And in doing so, those are hard-fought issues at the table that you go on. You don't want to lose your seniority and your wages and your benefits. So I think the solution that Lori proposed was the right one, and that's the one that we're moving on so that we can reduce the disruption. So I thought that had already been communicated, so maybe I'm making news today, wasn't intending to, but thank you for calling in. That's why do these shows, is that there's things that I don't know that I don't know, and I only know about them because people call and let me know. And if there's a problem in something that we're doing, we want to fix it.
When you have to rely on a radio program when you have the totality of the resources available of the provincial government at your fingertips, and you have to rely on a radio program for your consultation, where, as we saw earlier in the program, the host is selecting what topics get to be talked about. Boy, do we have some problems. But it underscores why continuing to call in to that radio program is so important, because apparently, as per Danielle Smith, that is one of the primary pathways that she gets feedback and makes major policy change. And just for what it's worth, she was, in fact, making news there, because all of the unions involved went, wait, what? They found out about it through the radio program. And that's, again, it just highlights the lack of awareness for how these things are supposed to happen. But speaking of how things are supposed to happen, there was a caller who called in with a question on duty to consult and the separation referendum. And it was framed in a slightly disingenuous way, but boy, did Danny lean into it.
Without a mandate from the people, what would you consult them on? Like if we had the vote and everybody voted no, we want to stay in Alberta, what would you like? What do you consult without a mandate from the people?
Blaine, you're...
I understand if people want to separate, then you're like, okay, the majority of Albertans want to separate. I now have to sit down with our First Nations and consult them, because they're a very important part of our society and everything. But what would you consult them with without a mandate from the people?
Blaine, that is exactly my position. So thank you for seeing that as well, because that's where the real challenge is that I think the court made a mistake, that duty to consult is based on government action that governments are going to take. This is a testing of the waters to see if Albertans even want us to have this question, even start the process. And so we put the remain question on the ballot. Do you want to remain in Alberta? That's option one. But we had to define what no meant. You can't just ask a question, do you want to remain in Alberta, yes or no? Because what if everybody votes no? What are you supposed to do next? So what does no mean? Well, no means that we start the legal process to hold a binding a vote on separation. And I need to get an indication from Albertans whether they even want to have that conversation. So that's what's going to be voted on October 19th. That's what we put on the ballot. And we're going to continue to fight it out in the court, because I think that it's a very dangerous precedent to be set that people are not allowed to have a say on a democratic issue. I think that people, the way our legislation is structured, is that people should be allowed to bring a question forward, either for consideration by the legislature or for the consideration of the public as a whole. And we want to preserve that legislation, because if we allow this decision to stand, it means that we've got to throw our legislation out altogether. And I don't think that's what Albertans want.
Oh, I think it might be. If Danny's whole reason for using taxpayer funds to appeal the decision of the judge who said that the government had a responsibility and a duty to consult before they went ahead with the referendum question, because that in and of itself is government action. If her whole reason to do that is because she doesn't want to admit that they made bad law, that's bonkers. On brand, but bonkers. But it goes further than that, because, we've got this gentleman who's calling in. He's talking about, well, if you haven't had the vote yet, like, you have to have the vote to have the mandate. You don't know if you have a mandate until you've done the vote. So you got to do the vote, and then you find out whether or not you're going to do the thing. And then, I guess once you know that you're going to do the thing, you should probably have a duty to consult. But if you're not going to do the thing, see, here's the thing. The referendum is the thing. Asking the question is the thing. The government taking on that responsibility is the thing. And as much as Smith likes to be like, well, I don't know what the duty to consult is, let's be clear. The Supreme Court has defined and affirmed what excuse me, the Supreme Court has defined and affirmed what the duty to consult is. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times. They've done it 5 times. The Supreme Court has said in 5 different cases, this is what the duty to consult is. I will read it to you now. The foundation of the duty in the Crown's honor and the goal of reconciliation suggests that the duty arises when the Crown has knowledge, real or constructive, of the potential existence of the Aboriginal right or title and contemplates conduct that might adversely affect it. The controlling question in all situations is what is required to maintain the honor of the Crown and to effect reconciliation between the Crown and the Aboriginal people with respect to interests at stake. So, if there is any possibility, again, let me read it. When the Crown has knowledge, real or constructive, of the potential existence of the Aboriginal right or title and contemplates conduct that might adversely affect it. Well, we know that separation would do that. We know that asking a question about asking a question might adversely affect the treaties. So you can try to spin it as, I don't want to do the duty consult because I wrote this really shiny law and I'm really proud of it. And I believe in direct democracy as long as it doesn't affect corporate interests like Australian billionaires. You could try to say that all you want, but the Supreme Court has articulated what duty to consult is 5 times. 5 times. You have to wonder what kind of lawyers Danielle Smith has working for her, that they aren't even able to read the Supreme Court rulings where this is defined and reaffirmed. You have to wonder. But there's one other clip that I want to play because it makes such a good segue for our last segment.
My question, to improve transparency, will you require audited financial statements as a condition of provincial funding, advocate for stronger federal enforcement of transparency requirements, and tie ongoing funding to the timely public disclosure of audit reports? Thank you.
Well, it's an interesting idea. I mean, I hadn't considered that. That would be our only lever, is to say we'll only do business with those nations that are able to account for the dollars that we send to them. Let me take that away, and I'll talk with my Indigenous Relations Minister about that, and also my Finance Minister. It could well be that the Auditor General would like us to do that too, because we make that requirement of everyone else we give money to. If you're a nonprofit, you get money from us. If you have money that we give to you as a municipality, if you are our health agencies, our school boards, all of them are required to tell us how they spent the money, just as a way of being accountable for taxpayer dollars. And since we're partnering with nations on a lot more files, I mean, our level of spending, whether it's for healthcare or for long-term care, whether it's for addictions care or whether it's for economic development, it's growing and it's continued to grow. So I won't make a commitment on that today, but let me take it away and see if we should have the same rules that apply to everyone that we do business with.
You have to know it's coming. I mean, first of all, that's the premise of the question is bad. So there's that. Accepting the premise of the question, as Danielle Smith did there, and then pontificating about the importance of knowing exactly how taxpayer dollars are spent at all times and knowing where that money goes. The boldness of making those sorts of claims is remarkable, as tens of millions of dollars, like 40 plus millions of dollars, remain unaccounted for years now because of a decision that Danielle Smith made in regards to procurement decisions. And my lawyers are going to be so angry at me. Because there's been some developments potentially related to that file this week. I'm not saying that they definitively are related to that file, to be clear. But tangentially, there's some fascinating coincidences at play here, and there's also a correction of the public record that, for the good of the discourse, the political discourse in the province of Alberta, the Breakdown would now like to take the opportunity to attempt to rectify, because we saw this little post come up from the Métis Nation of Alberta. I'm going to blow that up to make that a little bit bigger. It's a fascinating little thing. Came out a couple days ago. I'm not saying that the Breakdown was the first to report on it, but the Breakdown was definitely the first to report on it. Métis Nation of Alberta statement by the Citizens Council of the Ottawapiswak. I'm sorry, Métis government. And also, Saturday, if somebody wants to send me the phonetic pronunciation of that, I will read it on next week's show. Following meetings held last week in Edmonton, where confidential information and documentation was provided to Citizens Council, including privileged legal advice, a series of unanimous resolutions were passed and direction was provided for this statement to be released. Citizens Council confirms that Mr. Aaron Barner is no longer employed as the Senior Executive Officer, SEO, of the Ottawapiswak Métis government effective immediately. That's not nothing. And it's not nothing for a long list of reasons. It's unusual for the chief executive officer or the head mucky muck of anything to just get fired. No transition plan. It's just done. It is unusual for that decision to be made following the disclosure of, I just want to get this right again, confidential information and documentation, including privileged legal advice. It is unusual for an organization to part ways with a long-standing employee under those circumstances. It's not nothing. And the Globe and Mail picked up the story fairly quickly. They did a story where they talked about a top executive at Métis Nation of Alberta leaves organization. I do love their photo choice for the story, because they put, I'll read the caption. A truck is parked in front of the recovery center under construction in the Métis Nation of Alberta in Smoky Lake, Alberta on April 22nd, 2016. That's the picture that they chose. One can only speculate why. But now we get to the correction of the public record, because in that story, one of the questions that came up is, it turns out, as we have talked about before on this show, and may have resulted in part in a $6 million lawsuit against the Breakdown that, yes, is still ongoing. It turns out that there is something of a relationship between Mr. Barter and one Sam Mraiche. And here's the offending paragraphs. Scott Hutchinson, a lawyer for Mr. Mraiche, said in a statement that his client has, quote, nothing to do with any change in Mr. Barner's employment situation, end quote. New quote, to insinuate otherwise in your reporting because they both attended the same hockey game 25 months ago is both unfair and wrong, end quote, Mr. Hutchinson said. Well, it's a little bit more than just a hockey game, isn't it? Because it turns out there's the one hockey game, the skybox one. That's Mr. Barter right there, sitting beside Mr. Mraiche, directly behind the Premier of Alberta. There's another hockey game that also happened. That's Mr. Barner again. There, standing fairly close to Mr. Mraiche. And in that photo, we also have Mickey Amory. We also have the head mucky muck executive level at MH Care standing right beside Mr. Mraiche, allegedly. We also have the former chief of police at the Edmonton Police Service standing there, all of them in this photo with Mr. Barner in this skybox. So I guess it just wasn't one game just 25 years ago. I guess 25 months ago. It was 25 months. He needs to double check to make sure that he gets this correct before his lawyers light his hair on fire. Yes, 25 months ago. See, we're attention to detail here at the Breakdown. But it does go a little bit deeper than just hockey games, doesn't it? Because it turns out, as we detailed in our October Skybox episode, that the relationship predated that one hockey game that the lawyer for Mr. Mraiche referenced. We shared this photo in our Skybox episode back in 2020. Here's Sam Mraiche and Aaron Barner meeting with Josephine Pond. Thank you to Aaron Barner with the Métis Nation of Alberta and Sam Mraiche, Carver PA Corporation, for inquiring further about the Indigenous Housing Capital Program and discussing the projects you're working on. So they shared a meeting with the minister of the government at the time. It's not all they shared. They also shared a company, because shortly after that meeting, in 2021, Sam Mraiche and Aaron Barner formed the Métis Strategic Service Corporation. So that's a little bit more than a hockey game. Just one hockey game. That's a business relationship, that is. And the business relationships between the Métis Nation, with Aaron Barner as the head muck administrative guy, didn't end with Aaron Barner having a company with Sam Mraiche for strategic corporationing. From the financial statements of the Métis Nation themselves, the nation is responsible for a premise lease agreement with 2262576 Alberta Limited for $2.2 million. That's no small chump change. 2262576 is, of course, a numbered company that is exclusively owned at the time by Sam Mraiche. So that's a little bit more than a hockey game. I'm just saying it's a little bit more than one hockey game. Mr. Hutchinson is the one who said that there was only one hockey game. I'm just saying, for the correction of the public record, a little bit more than one hockey game. But wait, there's more, because we also got this story here from the Tyee that details an ongoing lawsuit regarding some of the folks involved in doing construction in conjunction with the Métis Nation, and there are some allegations unproven in a court of law. These are only allegations. I will now read some of the allegations that may or may not be pertinent. Sam Mraiche, who was the owner of a company called Maluka Construction, alleges Mraiche at the same meeting said he owned Aaron Barner, the senior executive officer at the Ottawa-Pemmisawack Métis government, formerly the Métis Nation of Alberta, or MNA, who was responsible for negotiating the MNA Recovery Centre contract and other contracts for apartment buildings that Maluka Homes built for the MNA. Sam Mraiche is also suing Barner. At another heated meeting with Sam Mraiche, it is alleged Mraiche again claimed he had the power connections to pull all of the projects from Maluka Homes and had a government official on the speakerphone to confirm his influence. Those are allegations unproven in a court of law. But all of these things, especially the Facebook post from Josephine Pond going back to 2020, where she I'm just going to read it again. I want to be accurate. Thank you to Aaron Barner with the Métis Nation of Alberta and Sam Mraiche, Carver PA Corporation, for inquiring further about the Indigenous Housing Capital Program and discussing the projects that you're working on. So many coincidences. I'm not saying that any of these coincidences are any way definitive proof of anything. I want to be very, very clear about that. But I do find it, let me get the phrasing right, unfair and wrong to insinuate that the only event was the same hockey game 25 months ago. I do find that unfair and wrong to inject that into the public discourse. Do with that what you will. I'm still getting emails tomorrow. And that's it. That's our program, folks. Got a couple of one other big announcement that I'm excited about, because let me get the posters up here. we got the show in Edmonton. I'm very excited for it. It's going to be a boatload of fun. The group of folks that we have coming out for it it's ridiculous. So I'm going to throw the old poster up because we're updating it again tonight. July 25th, 2026, Edmonton. The breakdown's coming for you. And boy, do we have a panel. We have Dr. Patrick Lennox, who is an international intelligence expert who fought pirates, got a medal. We have Dr. Jared Wesley, who's a political scientist, who is one of my favorite people to talk to. We have Jody Calahoo Stonehouse, who's also one of my favorite people to talk to. She's going to be joining us on stage. We have Rocky Pancholi, deputy leader for the NDP, who was in the committee meeting where the UCP ran roughshod all over democracy in order to go forward with their separatist question. She's going to be joining us, and I get to update the board. Because, see, we got a narrative that we're building here, because we're going to be talking about Alberta's separation. Dr. Wesley is going to tell us how we got here, is the plan. Dr. Lennox is going to tell us what are the risks. Both Jody Calahoo Stonehouse and Rocky Pancholi are going to talk about what it's like watching the subversion of democracy up hand. Both have their unique individual perspectives. I'm really looking forward to Jody Calahoo Stonehouse's perspectives on the First Nations and Indigenous piece, existing in a realm of governance that is complex, to say the least. Hopefully, we're going to have an interview with another individual that will be able to flesh that out coming up in the next few weeks. And so we've got, like, how did we get here? Here is the problem that we face currently. And we have two more guests that we're going to be announcing. One of them we're announcing tonight, because it is no good to say, oh, there's this whole big thing. What do we do about it? Or there's this whole big thing, without saying what we can do about it. And for that reason, I'm very excited to update the poster to include Brad LaFortune from Public Interest Alberta, because they're involved in a whole bunch of different things. And when we did our last live show in Edmonton, Brad was there for that one. And there was a big conversation about engagement and getting involved. And I'm really excited to see what that engagement and getting involved is going to look like, especially since Public Interest Alberta is one of the groups that has stepped forward to put together a third-party advertiser to address the referendum questions. The Public Interest Alberta and their TPA, that is not the only route that we're going to be going to give people options for how to do the things. But Brad is super amazing. He's one of my favorite people to read his bio. Bradley is a passionate community organizer, settler, and advocate for social justice, human rights, and the public interest. Born and raised on the prairies, he spent the last 20 years in Edmonton. In the past, Bradley has worked with community organizers, labor unions, and advised leaders and politicians from all levels of government. His favorite part of advocacy is working with good people, helping make big change happen. I'm so excited that Brad has agreed to be a part of the panel that we're going to be putting together for the live show in Edmonton. This is going to be such a good night. I'm so stoked. We got some people who are going to be bringing some things for tables in the front lobby. It's we're so overswinging on this thing. It's going to be fantastic. There are tickets still available. You can get your tickets for that at www.thebreakdownablive.ca. $30 is the regular price for folks who are on Age 8 app. We do have a discounted price available for them as well. What better time to debut your new Breakdown merch? I couldn't get through it. I thought I was going to be able to get through that one. I'm just plugging the things now. If you want to get your hands on some of the Breakdown merch that we have, we've got the hoodies, the t-shirts, the hats, the tank tops, all of the good things. You can do that at www.thebreakdownabmerch.ca. And if you want to support the kind of content that we're trying to produce here at The Breakdown, then you can do so by signing up to be one of our Patreon supporters at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab. If you're not into the long-term commitments, then you can also send e-transfers to info@thebreakdownab.ca. All of those funds go towards helping us get the gear that I touch at the beginning of the show and delay everything. So there's that. It's going to be, there's all the plugs. I got to play the clip now.
How's your BS detector evolved over time?
I tend to be pretty trusting.
It still makes me smile. It still makes my heart full. It's just fantastic stuff. I think that's it. It's going to be fascinating to see. I'm still working my way through all of the court documents that we received on the Athena Mitsoulopoulos, former AHS CEO lawsuit. I'm looking forward to hopefully including some stuff there. There will not be an open mic this week. I was reminded that I had said we'll be doing open mics every 2 weeks because we were riffing on your province, your premier. And then I got all excited, and we've done one every Thursday for the last couple of weeks. So we're going to take this week off from the open mic. We will be back in a week and a half, I guess. Our next open mic will be on July of the 9th. But we will be back next weekend for another live show where we'll take a look at all of the goings on in Alberta politics. If you appreciate the kind of content that we're producing and you're watching on the YouTubes, then do the subscribe and the like and the share. And then if you are listening to the podcast, the stars and the reviews and all of that good stuff, tell your friends, all of that sort of thing. Now I've plugged the show. It's going to be fascinating to see where this whole corrupt care thing goes, though. These people's fascination with rink sports. It's fascinating to me. I'll leave that there. That's it for tonight. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Big thanks to the chat for being as active as they were tonight. Happy Canada Day for July 1st. Get your Canada on, y'all. I'm gonna be wearing hats and t-shirts and trying to get as Canadian as I possibly can be. And annoying as many people as I possibly can be. I'm gonna put a new sticker on my vehicle. That's what I'm gonna do. So thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep the conversation going.
How's your BS detector evolved over time?
I tend to be pretty trusting.
I knock the camera over. I play the wrong clip. What's even going on? I don't know. Take care, everyone. Keep the conversation going.